Welcome to the Event Answer Studio. Today I'm making this 6-foot freestanding wreath using link balloons. You'll need an electric inflator as well as a sizer box for this project. I'm using 12-inch link balloons, and these are special because in addition to the nozzle, on the opposite end they have a tail so we can tie these end to end in long chains. Inflate 2 of these 12-inch balloons until they're near their full size. Then, using a sizer box, size them to 9 inches in diameter. Gently press one of the balloons against the 9-inch hole and slowly let air out until it just fits through. Once both balloons are 9 inches in diameter, tie them into a pair by wrapping the nozzle around twice and tying them in a knot. Repeat this step until you have 16 of these 9-inch pairs. Take 2 of those pairs and tie the tail end of one pair to the tail end of another pair. Simply stretch the tails and wrap them around each other, tying them in a double knot. This will create a chain of 4. To this chain, I'm going to continue tying on new pairs so it gets gradually longer until I have a chain of 16 balloons tied end to end. Repeat this process so you have 2 chains that are made up of 16 balloons. Next, I'm going to inflate 6-inch link balloons to 5 inches in diameter, and I'm going to speed this process up by using an electric timer pump for these smaller balloons. But you could continue using the normal electric inflator and a sizer box and it would work just the same. I'm going to inflate 2 of these 6-inch balloons to 5 inches in diameter and then tie them into a pair by wrapping the nozzles around twice and tying them in a knot. Repeat this step until you have 16 of these 5-inch pairs. Now, just like the larger link balloons, I'm going to tie these smaller link balloons end to end until I have a chain of 16 balloons. Then I'll repeat this process to make a second 16 link chain out of these 5-inch balloons. These 4 long chains will be the outside and inside edge of our wreath. But to give our wreath structure, we need to make some rings to support these long chains. So I've inflated 4 12-inch balloons to 8 inches in diameter, and then I'm going to tie those end to end in a chain of 4. Then you're going to take the tail on each end of this chain and tie them together to create a ring. Simply tie these tails in a double knot and that will create a ring of 4. Repeat this step until you have 16 of these rings of 8-inch balloons. To join all these elements together into a wreath, I'll be using 4-inch balloon pairs. Now you can use a hand pump to inflate these balloons, or you can use an electric timer pump. I'm inflating these 5-inch balloons to 4 inches in diameter, 2 at a time, and then tying them into pairs. In total, you'll need 64 of these 4-inch pairs to join the entire wreath together. To speed up that assembly time, I'm going to pre-attach my 4-inch pairs onto the 8-inch rings by slipping one balloon of that pair into the center of the ring and then pulling it out towards the edge so that the nozzles of the pair sit against the nozzles of the link balloons. Then I'm going to repeat this process so that one pair sits against the nozzle of each of those link balloons. I've repeated this process for all 16 of my 8-inch rings. Now it's time to assemble the wreath. I've laid out my 2 larger chains and my 2 smaller chains on the floor next to each other. I'll be joining the chains to the ring using the 4-inch balloon pairs that are already on the ring. Now you're going to take your first 9-inch chain, and between the first and second balloon of that chain, you're going to join that between 2 of the link balloons of the ring by nestling that joint of the chain between the 4-inch balloons, and then twist those 2 4-inch balloons around each other, and that will secure the chain and the ring together in a joint. Arrange the balloons so that the chain is always sitting perpendicular to the ring. Now I'm going to rotate the ring to the next 4-inch balloon pair and join the second 9-inch chain between the first and second balloons of that chain so that they sit right between the 4-inch balloons of the ring. Twist those 2 4-inch balloons around each other and that will lock the 2 of them together. Now it's critical that the 2 9-inch chains are sitting right next to each other, as that will make up the outside edge of the wreath. Between the next 4-inch pair, I'm going to join the 5-inch chain between the first and second balloons so that that joint sits right between the 4-inch balloons, and then twist those 2 balloons around each other. As I join the second 5-inch balloon chain between those last set of 4-inch balloons, you'll notice that as I twist those 4-inch balloons, they are always sitting on the outside edge of the ring, and I've arranged them so that the 2 balloons of that pair sit in line with the ring, perpendicular to the chains. Now I'm going to join my second ring to the chains in the exact same way we did the first ring. On the chain, I'm going to count over 1 link balloon so that there's only ever 1 balloon of the chain between rings. Slip the ring under the chain so that the joint of that chain sits right between the 4-inch balloons, and then twist those 4-inch balloons around each other, making sure those 4-inch balloons sit perpendicular to the chain. As you rotate the ring around to secure the next chain to the ring, you want to make sure you're not skipping over any balloons or getting your chains tangled up. The wreath assembly is a little wily until you get at least 3 or 4 rings attached to the chains, but at that point it'll begin to have enough structure that the shape of the wreath will become apparent. So until you get to that point, just make sure you're paying close attention that there's only ever one link balloon between the 4-inch pair joints. Now you'll notice that as I'm adding on this second ring, that the 4-inch pair that's next to my body is twisted around a little weird, and it was towards the inside edge of the ring, and that was forcing the chain out at a weird angle. So that's why it's always critical to check the placement of your 4-inch balloon pairs so that they're always on the outside of the ring and they're in line with the ring. So they should be perpendicular to the chains at all points. Once you get 3 or 4 rings attached to the wreath, you'll notice that it's beginning to curve towards the smaller balloon side, which is the inside edge of the wreath. And I find from that point on, it's helpful to have that side pointing towards you. And as you continue to tie on the rings, the wreath will form around you and you'll basically be sitting in the center of the wreath. And I find this the easiest place to assemble the wreath from. This wreath project requires a lot of balloon sizes and techniques, so I've made a set of written plans to walk you step by step through this entire project, from a complete supply list, step-by-step written instructions, full color illustrations, and tips along the way to help you make this wreath successfully every time you attempt it. You can find the digital plans and other helpful resources linked in the description box below. The wreath will slowly curl around you as you add the rings, and once you add a ring between the last 2 links of each chain, we'll pause here adding rings and tie the tail end of the first and last link of the chains together, completing the circle that makes up the wreath. Then we can attach the 16th ring between these last 2 link balloons, completing the main structure of the wreath. The link balloons are rigid enough to be able to stand this circle up on end and have it keep its form. Latex or foil balloons can be added on top to decorate the wreath in whatever way you'd like. I'm using this 40-inch red bow from Burst Party Co. as a classic touch to my wreath. I'm not going to attach it in the center, as that will pull the loops at an angle. I'm going to attach each side to the latex balloons directly behind it using a couple glue dashes. I'm going to set the bow on top of the wreath where I want it to stay, and then right where the foil balloon touches a latex balloon behind it, that's where I'm going to place my glue dash to the latex balloon. Remove the paper backing, and then press the foil balloon into that glue dash and hold it for a couple seconds so it gets good adhesion. I'm going to place a couple glue dashes behind each side of the bow to hold it in place. This wreath can be displayed in a lot of different ways. You can attach fishing line and hang it from a ceiling, attach it to a wall using the tape method, or tie 2 backdrop stands to the backside of the wreath and use it as a photo frame. If you'd like to make your own wreath, check out those written plans in the description box below. And if you'd like to make something else for the holiday season, you should watch this video. Until the next time, remember, stay creative, everybody.